Sprinkle, 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 sprinkle. How moral is sprinkle, sprinkle culture? That's a conversation I really want to get into on our channel. Is it something that a woman of God should be aspiring to? Does it have moral undertones that just make it void ab initio? That means like rotten from the root up. What is sprinkle sprinkle culture, and should you know about it? Does it affect you? Let's get into it. Welcome to Victoria's Reveries and to the Cozy Calendar podcast, where we talk about things centered around faith, Christian faith in particular, and where I discuss my journey and how we can all have a beautiful relationship with God. I know this is not my kind of tea, but we need to sip the tea. Oh my God, side note, I forgot all about our tea culture and our have a drink culture, so my bad. Erased the last 5 episodes. Today I'm having black cardamom tea, and I hope you've also brought along a drink so that you can enjoy this episode. And if you're perhaps watching me from work or listening to me on your way home, driving, enjoying, breezing, enjoying your last few minutes or moments away from capitalism, I hope you enjoy this episode, and I hope we all have the opportunity to give me your nuanced thoughts, whether you agree with me or disagree with me. Make sure you drop a comment below, like this video, subscribe to this channel for more amazing Christian-centered content from an everyday Christian like yourself. So, now that the shameless plug alert has ended, I hope you've been doing well since the last week where we had our video where we were just catching up with each other. I actually really enjoy being on this platform and discussing things with you, a broad range of topics that touch on our everyday Christian living, just in a different, real way and not in an out of touch kind of way. I know it's not messy. It's not like me to be messy, but I really just can't ignore the urge to talk about sprinkle, sprinkle. And I want to talk about it because I'm a woman in my mid-20s who is also learning about themselves and is learning about their dating style, the kind of man I would want in my life. And I have also been privy to many conversations online over the years. Just to give you a backdrop for people who know nothing about what sprinkle sprinkle is a term it's a code word that came from the channel and from the creator Shera7, who gives women dating advice and gives women advice on leveling up and hypergamy. This kind of content came into focus around 2017, 18, 19, pre-pandemic, and I think during the COVID pandemic is when there was a real upshot of the content, especially because everyone's at home, people are bored and not busy, and therefore have the opportunity to maybe think about personal development and think about personal branding. Women in particular at this point had reached a stage where dating became a more prominent conversation, especially because before this, women would always get told, be the ride or die woman. So if you want to be loved and to love, you have to be the ride or die woman who does everything, who's the woman she's always like, things are always just being done to her. She's always breaking her back for somebody. That was the initial rhetoric. Sprinkle culture, especially in the conversations where Black women are centered, became a culture that was supposed to be countercultural as opposed to going with the flow. And it was supposed to give women strategies to have hypergamous relationships that won't leave them feeling broken. What's it called? Broke, dusted, disgusted. There's a term for it. Let me just give me a second to remember it. Broken, dusted, and disgusted. I'm going to make sure that the right term is at least on the screen, but broken, busted, and disgusted, something like that. And so women got to the point where collectively they decided that, you know what, I'm sick and tired of men, and I'm sick and tired of being used and of depleting myself. I think that's a great realization to come to if you feel like your relationships don't serve you at all. And I think why it's really important to address this conversation is because I've made the observation that we came from one extreme end and went to another extreme end. No sense of balance, no sense of nuance, no lessons learned, just two wrongs making a right. And of course, we know that that is impossible. So I just want to discuss sprinkle culture, also to illuminate the young minds out there, the young women who are looking for a voice to listen to. Probably you're in your late teens, early 20s, and if the dominant cultural voice is saying sprinkle, and you have no proper insight into the background and into the nitty-gritties of that culture, you could very easily be swayed into a direction that's truly not meant for you. And because you're at such an impressionable age and stage in your life and your mind is still very malleable, you could easily end up becoming a person that you don't want to be. I think many women who subscribe to this content are truly your everyday woman who's trying to make sure that she ends up having a hypogamous relationship. That means that she ends up having the traditional sense of a relationship where the man leads and he probably makes more money than you do, and he probably also feels confident based off of that and pours into your relationship in a way that would make you feel like you can be in touch with your femininity. I think that's a great value to aspire to. I've seen different variations where the opposite doesn't always yield the best outcomes. Let me just put it that way. And I think that there's also opportunities where the opposite could lead to a lot of harmony for some people, but for the vast majority, it simply does not. I think women have gotten to a place where they want to be more honest with themselves about not wanting to work as much as they did before, being the girl boss. The girl is bossing, the girl is stressing, the girl is tired, the girl is looking for restoration. So what avenues of restoration are we looking for? Are we looking for great wholesome avenues to channel that energy and to be productive in society in different ways outside of the workplace? Or are we becoming degenerate and leaning towards manipulation in order to find a safe space? Is that truly healthy? So I'm not privy to much of the culture. I just know enough about it to make a sound judgment. I've seen Share 7 come up on my timeline severally because I used to be very plugged into the femininity world, and that was just because I was young, trying to find myself, trying to understand myself. I think that's a side that I lean into naturally. And I also think that I needed to experience a kind of femininity that was just not around me. I needed to experience to just understand myself deeper. And that's how I landed on that side of life. That side of YouTube goes deep. It's so deep, so deep. And I think there was a time where everybody was dropping information and tips on how to be more feminine. And then that kind of becomes, I think that's great content to have, but it becomes more counterproductive at some point because femininity is largely a byproduct of being and rather than of thinking and being plugged into that side of your mind that is always doing. So if we're always doing and thinking all the things that we can cosmetically add onto ourselves, it doesn't necessarily mean that we are being. So that's just a minor critique on the whole content as a piece. But that notwithstanding, these are my few issues with the sprinkle culture. When I'm looking for advice, I tend to look for it from people that I want to be like. So if you tell me that you want to give me advice about financial freedom, I'm going to ask myself, what does your financial life look like that I should aspire to, which would be a good reason for me and a good justification for me to take your advice. Same case here. When I first heard of this content and when it started to really blow up, of course I had seen Shara 7 getting recommended, but I never gravitated towards her content. It felt a bit poorly edited for me, and that's not a dig because I know I was also at that point taking videos on my busted Samsung that wasn't even allowing me to edit properly via InShot. So yeah, the critique goes both ways, but for me it felt like content that it wasn't appealing just from the aesthetics point of view, because I felt like in terms of if you've been a YouTuber for years, you could at least invest a little bit more in your content. That's neither here nor there regarding the actual frame of mind of sprinkle. I think it's important for us to think about things, if we truly want to walk with God, to think about things from a more godly perspective. Like, what would Jesus say about this? Is it giving woman at the well good and wholesome? what exactly is it giving? And I know nothing is ever pushed out that's truly good for people and that makes it to the mainstream without it being at least a bit critical, it could have its very, very deep downsides. And I think on the internet, one of the things I've seen that women are really great at doing, and I'm going to just call this as it is, women are great liars on the internet. I love us, but we lie a lot. You'll see someone who doesn't look their best and you'll tell her, oh yes, sis, go queen, step on our necks. All those things we say on comments, and I'm just like, if it were you, you wouldn't want to see a dress fitted for an event they were going for, a wedding, and one of them had very deep cleavage and it didn't look flattering. It looked a little too much. And the other one was like, oh wow, she was thinking in the confessional and sharing her true thoughts in the confessional about how too much the dress was. And then on the other side, while talking to the lady, she was like, that dress was made for you. If you don't wear that dress, not gonna be safe for us, or something like, if you're gonna be doing a disservice to the dress and to your chest if you don't, and to your cleavage if you don't wear the dress. But her true thoughts were reflected in the confessional. Women do a lot of that. I feel like I've realized that it's almost as if to demonstrate your sisterhood, you have to pander to a certain degree, and pandering is really so disingenuous. Can we please do better? Long story short, when it comes to sprinkle culture, I just don't feel like Shara 7 is reflective of the kind of woman I want to be. I think she's someone who's naturally very beautiful. I think that she definitely looks great. However, I even feel like there's an energy I experience when I'm watching her that I just don't agree with it. And that's why I've always gotten her content and never watched for long. It just feels like I'm being taught how to scheme. And there's something about that just doesn't feel great to me. And it's because I believe in strategy, and I actually believe in dating very strategically. I'm not known for making lousy dating moves. That's something I want to say proudly. And at the same time, I think without balance, you can get to a place where it becomes so cutthroat. It's like, do you even recognize you're dealing with a fellow human being? Or are women the only human beings that are worth calling human beings and worth recognizing have feelings? That's the first thing. When I listen to Shara, she sounds like someone who's always scheming. She has this look in her eye that is a little devious. And I know maybe some people may come across this content and think I'm critiquing her. I'm critiquing her as a symbol of everything she stands for, and not necessarily her as a personal attack. This channel isn't motivated by such diabolical thoughts, so I'm just critiquing her because I have the right to critique, the right to observe, the right to give fair judgment, and the right to give my opinion in a respectful manner. So when I think of Shara, there's just something on that level that I don't agree with. Secondly, the crux of sprinkle culture is, I'm going to swipe your wallet until you've been ran dry. There's something about that just makes it feel like it's hustling. And I don't mean hustling for money. I mean like hustling like prostitution. That's what it makes me feel like I would be doing if I would be aligning myself to that train of thought. It feels like hustling because it gives the same energy as this phrase, run his pockets dry. And by all means, if I had a guy in my life who loved me so much, I think he probably even want to show me his affection in ways like spending on me, and I think that's a great thing to do. I would never discourage someone from doing that, but the motivation should never come from a really vile place where you just want to use someone materially, and where you just want to use someone materially, and where you just want to extract as much as possible. What would you do, and how would you feel about someone doing the same exact thing to you? And I think it's such a low vibrational plate that people have been eating with this kind of content because excuse me, I think it's such a low vibrational plate that people have been eating with this kind of content, primarily because, one, it always comes from the point of view that men have done this. But the thing is, when you're with a guy, you're not with 10,000 guys. You're just with that one guy. And if he is good to you, I don't think you should be trying to have this defensive energy in the name of femininity, which, if you know, true femininity is at rest, meaning you wouldn't be making all these mental calculations just to have an end goal. Things tend to come to you because you are at rest and you're operating from a place of purity. And that's the difference. Like, you shouldn't be doing that to people. That's the bottom line. Okay? And like I said, just to reiterate, it makes me very uncomfortable for me to follow such a train of thought or such a culture because it feels overly transactional. It's giving prostitute vibes. I saw a video yesterday on a channel on hypergamy where this lady was talking about how she had had a one-night stand with some guy and okay, I love being a Christian, bro. Sometimes I'm just like, whew. Not in a bad way, but I'm so glad I cannot relate to just, I feel like when you get to the place where you regard yourself, you're not just trying to throw yourself and have everybody experience that side of you. It's just not something you would want. And you wouldn't especially come to the internet to verbal diarrhea and to trauma dump about how you were so okay with this guy coming to you and you had a one-night stand and you were okay with the fact that you thought he had sent you $2,500, but lo and behold, it's the next morning and he says, wait, my kids are about to wake up and my wife is about to get home, so I think you should leave. Do you get why I'm calling it prostitute vibes? He literally sent her $250. Not that a $2,500 Venmo would have been a better thing or a prouder thing to have, but this lady literally came to the internet to rant or to share about how she got Venmoed $250, as in that's not even 25k anymore, or it's a little bit more now. But is that literally your worth? And then you're being scurried out, as in it's bad enough that you had to do the walk of shame. Now this guy is talking about his family, his kids are about to wake up, and you think that when you met him at the bars like the ones they have at cafe in town, the Westminster one, you think that because you looked all cute and sexy sitting there that you would be regarded with any more worth. But if you project that your worth solely comes from how you view yourself as a sexual being, then that's how you're gonna be regarded. And that's why I think sprinkle culture is toxic, because the women who are prescribing to this are not Shera. She's just the leader. She's not showing you the downsides of it. Or rather, even if she's probably pointing them out, it could go so south for so many people so fast, because you're not always going to meet a great guy. You're going to meet someone who's aware of how much you want to use them. You're going to meet someone who therefore has a vendetta against you. You're going to meet someone who's likely to bury you. Do you want to be a buried body? You could be the body. You're going to meet the killer one day, and it's not going to be very sprinkle angel dust anymore. It's going to be a story that we're hearing online, or that we are counting as yet another statistic of a woman who was murdered in a precarious situation, because of course women murdering is not right, femicide is wrong, but let's take accountability for the aspects that we can control, accountability for the people we allow into our spaces freely without coercion. Let's take accountability for that, because if that aspect of the conversation is minimized or is silenced or is made to seem like is hateful, we're never gonna learn. I don't want to hear you being a statistic because you sprinkled. At least, at the very worst, at least let that sprinkle be a joke between you and your boyfriend who's aware he wants to take care of you or something of the sort. Don't let it be something that you're saying with the random men who you know nothing about. You think you're the only one scheming. Let me tell you, scheming energy attracts scheming energy. That's just the bottom line. Next point, and obviously I'm feeling very passionate about this one because I just haven't been seeing enough critique about it. And I know what the kind of critique I hear is when people say these things, which I had a South African girl talk about this last week. She randomly came on my feed, which I didn't know why that happened, because this is not my kind of content, but it came up and I thought, yeah, maybe I should talk about this. this girl was talking about basically the same things I'm saying, pointing out the areas that make the sprinkle theory not infallible, the demerits of it. She was pointing them out in a respectful manner, and not people in the comments saying, oh, that's why you're ugly, that's why. And she was actually very pretty. That's why you're ugly, that's why you're a basic B. By the way, side note, I remember the last time I shared that I was struggling with cussing. I actually don't cuss anymore, so praise God. It's like, for me, it was just the tip of my tongue, where I was just surrounded by some people who used to cuss a lot, and it kind of got to me, but I don't do that anymore. Largely, I have my moments, but largely. Basically, she was saying, yeah, this is not right, guys, let's do better. People were calling her a basic B. That's why you'll never have a man with money, and that's why you'll never be able to level up. You're just so basic. And it was just so hateful. And that's another thing I don't like about sprinkle culture. It brings about the idea that all women are not equal. They're women, and then there are women. You know what I'm saying? And of course, in the day-to-day life, there are different kinds of women. Women who love to wear makeup, women who hate makeup, women who've never even worn makeup, women who like to date up, women who don't like to date up, women who like to do this, women who like to do that. And those nuances are great. However, for you to be putting someone else down just shows me just how rotten your idea and your ideology is, because it means that you think that you're better than other people. If I'm not wrong, that usually sounds like, what's that thing that starts with an N-word? Narcissistic tendencies. Absolutely. That's why I also don't align myself to that culture, is because it also makes some women feel bad for who they are inherently. Another reason, which I feel like I've already touched on, is that it's kind of manipulative. They talk about how you should make sure that you're partnered with an ugly guy who's gonna feel so indebted to you because you're a hot girl, and you're gonna be dating a guy who even feels like you should use him because he has nothing to show for other than his money or his means. That's all he's got, so he feels like you're doing him a favor. If that happens by default, fine. But if you're actually going out to meet people thinking, oh, who's the ugliest one I can get here? Who's the one who the mirror would not say this is the fair the mirror would not say this is the fairest of them all, that's the one I'm gonna go for. Don't you see how psychotic that is? That's borderline psychotic. Like, you see chicks, we're going to, what is it called, the polo club, and I'm looking for the shortest why does it have to be the shortest? Oh my god, my own biases are entering the chat. I'm looking for the most unattractive man here who's gonna feel so indebted to me. That's crazy. I think sometimes I sit down and I don't think I'm naive. In fact, I try to be strategic in how I think and to be wise. But sometimes I sit and I think about the level and the willingness that people have to scheme, and it scares me, and it makes me feel like maybe I am naive. Like, I would have never thought of that. And before, I used to hear people saying, if you have a kind heart, you're rare. Now I actually see it. I I thought we were all like this. And why I think this is a cautionary tale, and why I think it's a really important topic to talk about. Of course, we're gonna inject some of what would Jesus say towards the end, is because I feel like we're getting too comfortable to be wicked. We're getting very, very comfortable with wickedness in our society. We're getting very comfortable with vileness, with ruthlessness, and it's showing in every aspect of our society. And that's why I think this is a very important conversation to have. We need to sober our minds. We've been drinking the Kool-Aid way too long. We need to sober our minds. Because fine, you're gonna get a sprinkle man, and then your son is also gonna get sprinkle, but 10 times worse in future. Is it really even worth it? That's my question. Is it really even worth it? And two things that I think are related regarding sprinkle culture is that it makes you radically have to change who you are to fit into certain roles, so that you can say, oh yes, I did this, I got the guy, I fleeced, I ran his pockets dry, I swiped all them cards, I swiped him, and okay, I don't even have the terms, as you can see, but I feel like it's something we really need to take caution about. And I don't think anything that is truly meant for you will make you have to radically change radically change yourself so deeply. Anything that is from you and that's meant for you and is therefore from God will not make you have to radically change who you are, especially towards the negative. You might have to radically change who you are just to be a better version of yourself, to receive the kind of blessing or marriage or relationship that you should have, but you shouldn't have to radically make yourself so devious in the name of, I would say in the name of love, but it's actually not love, in the name of material gain. As in, you can have a business. It'll take less energy, I promise you. I know having a business can be tough, but it'll take so much less energy than all the scheming. I watch the few clips of this lady I've seen. I'm like, this is a woman who's constantly on the go. I don't see an image of, oh, this woman is living such a great life. You can see she's so well taken care of and so deeply enjoying her relationship. She's at rest. Now, this is what femininity looks like when it is being fully embodied. I don't get that vibe. And I'm not going to come here and lie to you that I do, just so that we can make, like, first of all, that is such a radical misunderstanding of what femininity should be. That's the toxic version of femininity. Tell me who in the Bible ever did a sprinkle. Just at the risk of sounding whatever you might actually want to label it at this point, I don't even care. When you think about the Proverbs 31 woman, yeah, that woman has got her things together. Do you think for a second she's about to say sprinkle? Do you really think that? If we think of women in the Bible that are supposed to be symbols of beauty, goodness, brilliance, if you think about Esther, the queen, do you think a queen truly sprinkles? If you want to scurry around like a rat,
when you catch me like a rat on the highway,
fine, accept your position, scurry around, sniff, scurry. I'm using those names because they're from the book Who Moved My Cheese, and I think those were two mice. If you want to be a rat and sprinkle, and I really am saying this with a pinch of salt, don't take this critique to heart. If you want to be a rat and sprinkle because you're scurrying around looking for cheese, do that, but accept who you are and accept the consequences of what that comes with, because that doesn't come along with a relationship that will fulfill you from the inside out. It'll come with probably a lot of financial benefits, and I'm not saying that those two things cannot marry, but they cannot marry when you're moving from such a wicked place. That I can take to the bank. You can take me to the bank. You can take that to the bank. That's a hill I am willing to die on. Another thing that has deeply dawned on me regarding sprinkle culture is that it shows me that we truly have a horrible model of love. We're obviously a society that didn't see a lot of successful marriages, a lot of successful relationships, and I have a lot of compassion in general for people who follow these trains of thought, or even people who start them, because it shows me that, wow, somewhere along the way, what was meant to be shown as love was misrepresented, and it became your complete reality. You didn't even probably realize there's probably thought patterns that you should free yourself from. Because hey, I won't stand here and say that everybody, that like all the marriages I have come across in my life have all stood the test of time. They haven't. There's so many things that have warped my psychology around love and relationships, and I can say that it's also something that you need to take to God to heal you. Or if you don't believe in God, which if that's the case, this might not be the channel for you. Even if you're struggling with the thought of divinity and with the thought of having God as your forefront, you should at least know some things you cannot just be moving from a place of hurt. Move from a place of a healed hurt, not from a place of you're just running and sprinkling. What is that? I don't agree with the undertones of misandry that are in the sprinkle regime, thought pattern, frame of mind, school of thought. I do not agree with it. And the reason why I think it reflects so poorly on how we've been raised as a society, and it reflects poorly on our understanding of love, is it really just pushes to the forefront all our brokenness. Like I was saying, if you see two kinds of couples that don't work, one is because maybe they were just not the right kind of people, and secondly, I truly do believe that if God is at the center of something throughout the whole thing, you will have a firm foundation. And I'd like to just reiterate that one of the biggest takings from my life in Christ and my life outside of Christ is that truly, 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 we don't realize how much of God's DNA is within us. So no matter how much we run, how much we hide, how much we dig into our agnosticism or our atheism or our new ageism and other schools of thought that demand for us to bow down to them, essentially what nobody can ever tell me is that you can never tell me that human beings do not naturally have a quality within them that makes them want to submit to something, believe in something, fight for something. And in this case, I think it's very counterproductive if your brokenness is at the forefront of fighting for this school of thought so that you don't get hurt like your mom, or you don't get hurt like the other woman you saw, or so that you don't get to marry a man who is like your father, or maybe you didn't even know your father and that's what you now feel because now you don't have a blueprint at all. You're trying to listen to someone who may seem like they are experiencing success in that arena. That's where my compassion for the people who follow these schools of thought comes from understanding that this isn't someone who probably wants to just be mean or just hate men. This hate, this energy, this scheming is coming from a place of brokenness. I want to turn our attention into the Bible right now. Turn our attention to the Bible. I don't know if you guys know, but for a while I was actually an editor, and so I always correct grammar when it's wrong within myself or other people. I just don't know how to let it go. So just to reiterate, anything that God is not at the center of will not thrive to its full potential. There are many relationships that are not godly, but two things could happen. God could just pour his grace both to the just and the unjust, and those people end up thriving. Or you could find that that relationship isn't evolving because these people don't have an understanding of love that flows from, when you have a godly relationship, which I haven't had in the beginning.
In the beginning. Yeah.
I haven't had one yet because I haven't had a handful. I only have a handful of them. Actually, just one. Lol, not a fingerful. I've only had one relationship and it wasn't centered around God and it wasn't even godly to begin with. But I also realized how the thought patterns of someone who submitted to God, even though I wouldn't say at that point in my life I fully was, and the thought patterns of someone who submitted to worldly thinking are so different. One is motivated by what is good and holy and pure and true, largely. The other may be largely motivated by the flesh. What's going to make me richer? What's going to make me look better? What's going to make me. And all that me energy is so heavily channeled in this sprinkle. And I think that's actually how she says it. She has to how a crow crows. I think it's crowing. I don't know. Hooting. No, that's an owl. Crow, sprinkle. That's how it sounds to me, and I think it's a very redundant school of thought to yoke yourself to if you do want to have those great outcomes. I don't think anybody in this life wants to not be loved. That's a lie. I don't care if you're the strongest, most valiant man riding a black horse, and I know that's a very oddly specific description. Even that man wants to be cuddled. Can you imagine? Even your African father, imagine he wants to be cuddled. I don't even want to have the mental picture of that, but even your astute, dignified African mother, African auntie who's always calling you out for your dressing at family gatherings, even her, she wants to be snuggled, held, probably tight, more than should be comfortable in our minds, but even she wants love, and that's how we're wired. And when we don't have the right blueprint for things, we often tend to go into the deep end and not in a good way. I never ever thought that I would be the person to sit down and talk about the plight of the boy child, simply because I thought it was a bunch of excuses. Like, what don't men have? They have all the opportunities. They have all the biases working in their favor, and I think many men still operate from that sphere or that hemisphere. But society has been changing since the 70s. Feminism took a forefront seat since the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and now we're seeing a version of it that is radical, and its radicalness is almost familiar because it reminds me so much of the misogyny that feminism was supposed to cure. It reminds me of, how can you become the same villain you were trying to beat? It doesn't make sense. We should operate from a place of love and equity. And when I see sprinkle, sprinkle, and other things, you know what goes on in my mind? Now, as a Christian, I'm like, ooh, Jezebel is taking over. Jezebel is taking over. And it's not a Jezebel, if you don't know. Jezebel was no, we've talked about Jezebel, I believe. I need to watch my own videos more. But she was a very radical, ruthless queen who really, like, she snuffed out the masculinity in her husband. She was very domineering. And there's a difference between having a naturally dominant personality, which many people do, and when it's natural, it's actually so beautiful. And there's a difference between having that kind of personality and being a Jezzy. A Jezzy just doesn't want anyone else to shine. It's largely a narcissistic person. That kind of woman is not the woman that you, as a woman of God, should be aspiring to be in any way, shape, or form. And I also know that those are not the outcomes that you would enjoy because you're not a wicked person. That's why I said that this content is not for everybody. It's for some people. And just to cap this off, I would like to bring the word into focus, because that is the point where we are here to learn and to grow. 1 Timothy 4:1 says, "The Spirit clearly says that in the later times some will abandon the faith and follow deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons. Such teachings come through hypocritical liars whose consciences tongue twister, have been seared as with a hot iron." Like, you don't care that this is somebody's son. You don't care this is somebody's father. You don't care this person actually truly loves you, and all you do is use them and abuse them because your conscience imepigwa pasi. It has been seared like it was hotly ironed. That's so horrible. That is so horrible. How did we ever get here? A close clue would be our lack of godlessness, our lack of ethics and moral conscience, even if it weren't in a religious manner, just ethics and moral conscience. We lack it in this society. So that's the thing that makes me cap off this discussion. I learned that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I fact-checked this quite thoroughly so I can speak on it. The thing, when I learned this, it actually brought so much into perspective regarding the creator Shera 7. I learned that this woman actually practices witchcraft and has a witchcraft shop where she sells different manifestation tools that are meant to help you channel your goddess inner energy. We will talk about that one another day, because let me tell you, I was deceived. Tell me what woman in the Bible has ever been called a goddess. Tell me. That notwithstanding, and I digress, I learned that this woman actually has a witchcraft shop, and her name Shera actually is inspired by the Canaanite goddess Asherah. That's actually such an uncommon name. That's a fact that you can't rebut very easily. And if you know anything about Asherah, she was widely referred to in the Bible as a goddess who heavily channeled sexual immorality, the use of your sexual prowess it's just Jezebel energy, just using men. And that's why men, you can't be affording to sleep around with anyone, because you are giving away, quite literally, your life force to people who are taking you and using that soul tie against you to channel and to siphon funds. Like, how did this whole psychology become so normal? But Asherah was a very wicked Canaanite goddess, and you should do your own research. Fact check everything I'm saying. Don't even follow it if you don't think that I'm right at all. Fact check. Whether you know me, whether you don't know me, perhaps I'm wrong. You could educate me. You could comment and make me see, oh, I'm wrong. But I am actually quite taking a very firm stand on this. And I'm not going to follow someone whose spiritual root, because life is spiritual and everything that manifests in this physical realm comes first from the spiritual realm. That's why in Matthew 18:18, one of my favorite verses, Jesus, before the disciples started casting out demons and doing works of healing, what did God do? Jesus first gave them the authority to bind on earth what is bound in heaven, meaning that things are bound in heaven first before they come to earth. And in heaven, it doesn't just mean paradise, but in the heavens, in the earth, in the realms that are not in this physical realm. And I am not going to yoke myself to a school of thought or a teacher who leads a school of thought that is bound to a Canaanite goddess or any other goddess, or that's just bound to wickedness. And after I realized this aspect, it put so much into perspective. It put so much into perspective regarding the conversations women are now having. Because I think that when the femininity outburst first happened, it was so wholesome. I was so happy. I was like, oh, finally I can actually be feminine and not get called what is it called, I think I used to get certain critiques like, Vicky, you're so obviously smart, because I would always be like amongst the top in my uni, and in law school that's very hard to achieve, and people would automatically assume I just want to be the career woman, the boss lady who's like girl bossing and doing all of that. But I had seen and experienced observing people who didn't thrive in that energy, or who thrived but only because they also had to really do it. And I wanted different for myself. I wanted to still be amazingly independent, which I am, and I thank God for, but I didn't want my career to be all that I do, and all my whole personality is just my career and how I work 24/7. And those women are actually quite difficult to date, because they think that everybody should be impressed by their track record and by what they have as a certificate or as a degree, and that's not all that there is to being a woman or a human being at all. So to cap this conversation, do you think sprinkle is something that as a woman of God you should be following? Do you think it's a train of thought that you subscribe to? Are you having second thoughts if you were a true follower of this school of thought? Are you rethinking your decisions? If you're a person who is struggling with dating, with relationships, with your own self-identity, and you find yourself in these spaces, if you're struggling with a lot of brokenness inside, I'm no minister. God knows. God knows. But I would like to give you the opportunity to give your life to Christ and to say a prayer that is literally coming right off the top of my head, but to start you out on the journey of truly submitting yourself, your thought patterns, your life to God, and to also yielding the blessings that come with that, the joy that comes with that, the love that comes with that, the love that can never be replaced, which is the love from the Father. Oopsies, the love from the Father. Not earthly fathers fail us sometimes. What do we say? They do. And not even everybody gets to say that they have a dad. And that can be a really sore spot. So whoever you are, man, woman, I want us to close our eyes and let's say this prayer. God, we come before you this beautiful afternoon. We thank you for the gift of life. We thank you for whoever is watching on the other side of the screen. We pray that, God, you may penetrate their heart with your radical love, that you may fix those broken areas that only them and you know about. I pray that if there's anyone who's having second thoughts but somehow is at a maybe God loves me, maybe God knows me, maybe I need to address this brokenness, maybe this is not the best for me, I pray that you may allow them to experience you, that you may richly reveal yourself to them in a way that they cannot deny. Let's also pray. Lord, I humbly come to you. I repent of my sins. I pray that you may reveal yourself to me, and that you may let me get to know you in spirit and in truth, and to worship you in spirit and in truth. If you've said that prayer and you truly meant it in your heart, I will pray for you, and I pray that you get to experience a side of life that isn't so broken, experience a side of life where you're truly aligned to the Creator and you can worship Him in spirit and in truth. Wow, this channel has gotten so Christian. We thank God, I guess. Anyway, that's just my intrusive thought, but thank you so much for watching and thank you for tuning in. I truly discourage you, and in Jesus' name, if anyone is trying to give hate comments, because I know Shara has quite a following, and it's almost cult-like to me. If I'm being honest, it's like the beehive. I don't mind if it's in the name of God. I'm going to call something. Just call something out. If it's to save a small sister somewhere who might get confused by some doctrines that doesn't actually serve them. So I just urge everybody to give me your very respectful points of view. You know, I'm not scared to block. I am not scared to block. I'm not scared to delete comments. Keep it respectful, keep it classy, and let's just have a very nuanced and open adult conversation about Sprinkle Sprinkle. Thank you so much for coming to the end of this video. If you liked what you saw, if you liked what you heard, please subscribe, please like, please share with 5 friends, share with a girlfriend you've been hearing saying Sprinkle Sprinkle, who might not know the depth of the manipulative energy that is actually involved in that doctrine. She might say Sprinkle Sprinkle in front of her boyfriend, and then the boyfriend starts questioning her. We can avoid that. Save your friend's relationship. Goodbye, and thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.